She defended me when the whole world mocked my failures and called me useless. But when I finally achieved success, I pushed her aside and chose someone else to stand by my side. I'm writing this because I can't sleep, haven't been able to for weeks. My hands are shaking as I type this, but I need to get it out before it destroys what's left of my sanity. Her name was Sarah. 8 years together. She was there when I was a complete nobody, working dead, in retail jobs, getting rejected from every interview, living in a studio apartment with a broken heater. Everyone else saw her. My own family stopped inviting me to gatherings because I was bringing down the mood. Friends gradually stopped calling back. But Sarah, she never flinched. When I got fired from the electronics store for attitude problems, she brought me soup and sat with me on the couch while I cried like a child. When my car broke down and I couldn't afford repairs, she drove me to interviews without complaint. When I failed my certification exam twice, she paid for the third attempt out of her teacher's salary. "We're gonna make it," she'd whisper in the dark when I'd wake in panic about our future. I believe in when can't believe in. The worst part, I started to believe her words were just expected, like that was her job. Supporting me became so normal that I stopped seeing it as extraordinary. Then everything changed. 3 years ago I finally landed the tech job. Within a year, I was promoted. Then promoted again. Suddenly I was making more money than I'd ever dreamed of. New apartment, new car, new clothes. People who wouldn't look at me twice were now asking for my time. That's when I met Victoria at a work conference. She was everything Sarah wasn't. Polished, connected. She understood my industry, spoke my new language, wore clothes that cost more than Sarah's monthly salary. When she laughed at my jokes, it felt different, sophisticated, like I'd finally found someone who matched the person I was becoming. The flirting started innocently. Coffee meetings that ran long, text conversations about work that drifted personal. I told it was networking, professional growth. Sarah noticed me staying late more often, being distant at home. She'd ask gentle questions, bring me dinner at the office, try to reconnect. Each gesture of love felt like pressure, like she was clinging to a version of me that no longer existed. "Or different," she said one night, tears in her eyes. "It's like we're embarrassed of who we used to be." I denied it, but deep down I was. The night it happened, Victoria and I were at a company party. Sarah was home grading papers, probably falling asleep to Netflix like always. Victoria looked stunning in her black dress, and when she pulled me aside and I didn't stop her. "Deserve someone who matches success," she whispered against my lips, "someone who elevates instead of holding back." Those words felt like permission, like validation of thoughts I'd been having for months. I went home that night and looked at Sarah sleeping in our bed, wearing one of my old t-shirts, her lesson plans scattered on the nightstand. For the first time, instead of feeling grateful, I felt trapped. The affair lasted 3 months before I finally told Sarah. Not because I felt guilty, but because Victoria was pushing for us to be public. She wanted to attend work events together, wanted me to leave Sarah and start fresh with someone who fit my new pawn. I remember exactly how Sarah looked when I confessed. She was making pancakes on a Sunday morning, humming some song under her breath. She was happy, genuinely, simply happy in our little routine. "I've been seeing someone else," I said just like that. No build-up, no gentleness. The spatula fell from her hand. The sound it made hitting the floor still haunts me. "How long?" she whispered. 3 months. She nodded slowly, like she was processing information in a meeting. Then she asked the question that broke something inside me. "Is it 'cause I'm not successful enough for now?" I couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. She packed a bag that day and went to her sister's. Didn't scream, didn't throw things, didn't beg me to reconsider. She just looked at me with profound disappointment before she left. "I hope she makes happy in ways I apparently couldn't," she said quietly at the door. "I hope it was worth it." Then she was gone. I moved in with Victoria 2 weeks later. Posted photos of us at expensive restaurants, company retreats, industry gala. My social media transformed overnight from quiet domestic moments to champagne and success shots. Everyone congratulated me, told me how much better I looked, how this new relationship suited me, how I'd upgraded. Victoria's friends welcomed me into their circle of power couples and ambitious climbers. For 6 months I felt vindicated. This was the I deserved, the partnership that matched my achievements. But success built on betrayal has a way of rotting from the inside. Victoria started showing her true colors once the novelty wore off. She was calculating in ways that gradually became clear. She'd network with my contacts behind my back, positioned herself for opportunities using my connections, made decisions about our social based purely on career advancement. When I got passed over for a promotion she'd been counting on, her support evaporated overnight. When I mentioned wanting to slow down and maybe think about starting a family, she laughed. "I'm not Sarah," she said coldly. "I'm not here to play house and hold hand through mediocrity." That's when I realized what I'd lost. Sarah never supported me because of what I could become. She supported me because of who I was. Even when I was nothing. Especially when I was nothing. Victoria loved my potential, my trajectory, my usefulness to her ambitions. Sarah had loved me when I was useless to everyone. I tried calling Sarah on a random Tuesday night 3 months ago. Her number was disconnected. I drove by her sister's house. They'd moved. I checked social media, but she'd blocked me everywhere. I asked mutual friends, but they all said the same thing. She doesn't want to be found by. That's when I hired the private investigator. I know how that sounds. I know it makes me worse than I already was. But I was desperate to at least apologize, to tell her I understood now what I'd thrown away. What I discovered destroyed the last piece of my soul. Sarah had quit teaching, left town entirely. But before she did, she'd been in therapy for months dealing with what she called betrayal trauma. The investigator found medical records showing she'd been on medication for severe depression and anxiety. She'd also applied to graduate programs across the country, got accepted to 3 different PhD programs for education policy. She was rebuilding her entire because I'd made staying in our shared world unbearable. The woman who'd supported everyone else her entire had to learn how to survive alone, because the person she'd loved most had discarded her like an outdated phone. Meanwhile, Victoria left me for my boss 2 weeks after I got that report. Turns out she'd been working that angle for months, just like she'd worked mine at that conference. "Nothing personal," she said as she packed her designer clothes. "Understand business. Now I'm alone in an expensive apartment filled with things that mean nothing, wondering how I became someone who could the only person who ever truly loved me. I see Sarah in every act of kindness I witness. Every patient teacher, every loyal friend, every person who chooses love over ambition. I wonder if she's happy now, if she's learned to trust again, if she ever thinks about the man she used to love who turned out to be exactly as everyone said he was. The success I thought I deserved feels hollow without her there to share it with someone who would have celebrated every victory like it was a miracle. I kept climbing higher and higher, but I away the only person who would have been genuinely proud when I reached the top. The response to my last post was overwhelming. Thousands of comments calling me everything from human garbage to exactly what's wrong with society. Most were right. Some have shared own stories of being the Sarah in similar situations. Those comments kept me awake for days. But a few people asked what happened next, how deep the consequences went. I wasn't going to share more, but then I got the final report from the investigator yesterday, and I realized my story gets so much worse. Need to understand who Sarah really was before I explain what I took from the world when I destroyed her. Sarah taught 3rd grade at an inner city school. Not because she couldn't get a better job, but because she genuinely believed every kid deserved someone who cared about them. She spent her own money on classroom supplies, stayed late tutoring kids whose parents worked multiple jobs, and somehow made learning feel magical for children who'd already learned not to trust adults. Her students adored her. Parents would request their kids be placed in Miss Sarah's class. Specifically, she had this way of seeing potential in everyone even when they couldn't see it themselves. Sound familiar? That's exactly how she treated me. During my worst years, when I was spiraling and bitter, she'd come home exhausted from dealing with 30 kids all day, and still have patience left for my endless complaining. She'd listen to me rant about unfair bosses, better candidates getting jobs I wanted, how the world was stacked against me. Never once did she suggest that maybe, just maybe, I was part of the problem. When I finally got promoted and started making real money, I suggested she quit teaching and find something more prestigious. Maybe work at a private school or get into educational consulting. Why would I leave my kids? She asked, genuinely confused. That's when I knew we were growing apart. She was content making a difference in small ways while I wanted to conquer the world. The investigator's final report arrived yesterday. What he found makes me sick to my stomach. After I left her, Sarah tried to keep teaching, but the stress of our breakup was affecting her performance. She'd have panicked during class. Parents started complaining that she seemed distracted, tired, not her usual energetic self. The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, had known Sarah for 6 years. She'd watched Sarah pour her heart into that school, seen her transform struggling kids into confident learners, witnessed her stay late countless nights to call parents or prepare special lessons. But test scores in Sarah's class dropped for the first time ever. Not because she'd stopped caring, but because she was barely holding herself together. The school district put her on administrative review. Sarah, who'd never gotten anything less than glowing evaluations, was suddenly under scrutiny for declining performance standards. She resigned before they could fire her. 30 kids lost the teacher they loved because I decided she wasn't good enough for my new. But that's not even the worst part. The investigator found Sarah's journal. She'd left it behind when she moved, and her sister had thrown it away. He retrieved it from public records when the sister filed a police report about apparently my attempts to find Sarah had scared her family enough to involve law enforcement. I shouldn't have read it. I definitely shouldn't share parts of it here, but I need to understand what I did to another human being. Entry from 2 days after I confessed. I keep replaying every moment, looking for signs I missed. Was I holding him back? Did I make him feel small? I thought love meant supporting someone's dreams, but maybe I was just enabling him to stay comfortable while I carried the weight of everything else. Maybe he's right to want someone better. Entry from a week later. Couldn't teach today. Had to call in sick because I started crying during morning announcements. The kids asked Ms. Rodriguez why I looked sad yesterday. How to explain to 8-year-olds that sometimes people trust completely decide are not worth keeping. Entry from a month later. Saw them together on Instagram. She's beautiful and successful in everything I'm apparently not. They look happy. Maybe this is what he needed all along. Maybe I was just a placeholder until he found his real person. 7 years of believing we were building something together, and I was just temporary. Reading her private thoughts about my betrayal was like being forced to watch footage of committing in slow motion. But the entry that broke me was from 3 months after our breakup. Applied for therapy today. The intake counselor asked what brought me in, and I started explaining about my ex-fiancé leaving me for someone else. She stopped me and said, "This sounds like betrayal trauma. Have considered that what we're experiencing might be similar to PTSD. I never thought of it that way. I just thought I was weak for not getting over it faster. But she's right. I can't trust my own judgment anymore. Every relationship I see, every couple holding hands, every wedding announcement makes my chest tight. He didn't just break with me, he broke something fundamental about how I understand love and loyalty. The worst part isn't that he left, it's that he made me believe our entire relationship was me fooling about what we had. Like I was living in a fantasy while he was just tolerating me until something better came along. She was right. That's exactly what I'd done." The investigator also found her medical records. Legally obtained through her insurance claims during a lawsuit she filed against the private investigator I'd hired before this one. Apparently I'd crossed legal lines trying to find her. Sarah had been hospitalized twice for panic so severe they thought she was having heart problems. She'd lost 30 pounds because anxiety had killed her appetite. She'd started taking medication for depression for the first time in her, all because I decided she wasn't impressive enough for my success story. Meanwhile, my relationship with Victoria was imploding in spectacular fashion. Remember how I said she left me for my boss? What I didn't mention was how she did it. Victoria had been systematically undermining me at work for months. She'd plant seeds of doubt about my capabilities in casual conversations with leadership. She'd volunteer for projects I was supposed to lead, then subtly demonstrate why she was better suited for advancement than I was. When my boss started showing interest in her, she began feeding him information about my insecurities, my past failures, my poor judgment in personal relationships. She painted me as someone who'd gotten lucky with one promotion but lacked the character for real leadership. By the time she moved in with him, I'd been demoted. Not fired, that would have been messier legally, just quietly shifted to a role with less visibility, fewer responsibilities, and significantly less money. Victoria had played the long game perfectly. She'd used my connections to build her own network, learned my weaknesses to exploit later, and positioned herself as my superior replacement in every way that mattered to our industry. I'd traded a woman who loved me unconditionally for one who saw me as a stepping stone. Now I was jobless, friendless, and completely alone. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. Last month, I ran into Sarah's former principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, at a coffee shop. I almost didn't approach her, but something compelled me to at least apologize for whatever role my actions had played in Sarah leaving the school. She said when she recognized me, her voice filled with disgust. "Do you have any idea what did?" I tried to explain that I was sorry that I knew I'd Sarah, that I wished things had been different. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice rose enough that other customers started staring. "Destroyed one of the best teachers I've ever worked with. Sarah gave everything to those kids. She made children who'd been written off by everyone else believe they could succeed. And made her feel so that she couldn't even function in the classroom anymore." She leaned closer, lowering her voice to a furious whisper. I had to explain to 33rd graders why the teacher who'd promised to help them read better, who'd celebrated every small victory with them, who'd made them feel special, suddenly couldn't be their teacher anymore. Do you know what it's like to watch children blame themselves when adults abandon them? The coffee shop had gone quiet around us. Sarah spent her own money on those kids. She stayed late every day. She believed in children that everyone else had given on. And because decided she wasn't good enough for precious ego, those kids lost the one adult who'd ever made them feel capable of more. Mrs. Rodriguez gathered her things to leave, then turned back to me one more time. "I hope Upgrade was worth destroying someone who spent her making the world better. I hope her happy with the person chose to be." She left me sitting there, surrounded by strangers who'd heard every word. That's when I realized I hadn't just betrayed Sarah. I'd stolen something from 30 children who'd needed her. From parents who'd trusted her to care for their kids. From a school community that had lost someone irreplaceable because of my selfishness. The ripple effects of my betrayal reached so much further than just one broken heart. I keep thinking about those kids. Did they blame themselves when Sarah left? Did they think they'd done something wrong? Did they learn not to trust adults who promised to care about them? How many lives did I damage because I wanted someone more impressive standing next to me? This is the last thing I'll ever write about this. After today, I'm deleting this account and trying to disappear from the internet entirely. What I discovered makes me I'd never started looking for Sarah in the first place. The comments on my previous posts ranged from "deserve everything that happened" to detailed explanations of why I'm exactly the kind of person who ruins good people. A few have messaged me privately sharing similar stories from the other side. Those messages haunt me more than the angry ones. One woman wrote, "I was Sarah once. It's been 5 years and I still flinch when someone says they love me. Didn't just break her heart, taught her that love is conditional and temporary. That's a lesson that never fully heals." Another, "My kids still ask why daddy left us for his work friend. How to explain to a 6-year-old that sometimes parents choose other people over their own families. Sarah was lucky she didn't have children with Bite." That last comment hit differently because of what I learned yesterday. I need to go back 6 months to explain how I finally found her. After Mrs. Rodriguez confronted me, I fell apart completely. Lost my job when Victoria's sabotage campaign succeeded. Couldn't afford the expensive apartment, so I moved back to a studio in the same complex where Sarah and I had lived during my struggling years. Same building, same view of the parking lot where she used to scrape ice off my windshield in winter, because my hands would shake too much from anxiety and cold. I started seeing a therapist, not because I wanted to heal, but because I was having thoughts that scared me. Dr. Martinez was patient but direct. "We're grieving," she said during our third session, "but not grieving Sarah. We're grieving the image of as a good person. Sarah was evidence that we're lovable despite flaws. When betrayed her, didn't just lose her, lost the version of that was capable of being loved unconditionally." She was right. I missed Sarah, but I was mourning something deeper. I was mourning that my own capacity for genuine love. The person who could inspire that kind of loyalty from Sarah still exists, Dr. Martinez continued, but buried him under layers of ego and ambition. The question is whether want to excavate him or continue being the man who away the best thing in his. I told her I just wanted to apologize to Sarah. To tell her she was right about everything and I was sorry for making her doubt herself. And what would that accomplish, she asked. Would it help Sarah heal, or would it make feel better about the damage caused? I couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. I wanted to find Sarah for me, not for her. But I kept looking anyway. The breakthrough came through her students. I'd been thinking about those 30 kids Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned, wondering if any of them remembered Sarah fondly despite how her time with them ended. I found the school's Facebook page. Scrolled through years of posts until I found pictures from Sarah's classroom. Bright bulletin boards, smiling children, Sarah kneeling beside kids as they worked on projects. One photo made me stop breathing. Sarah was reading to the class, but she wasn't looking at the book. She was watching a little girl in a wheelchair who was mouthing along with the story. The expression on Sarah's face was pure joy, like this child's engagement was the most beautiful thing she'd ever witnessed. The comments on that photo told a story I'd never known. Miss Sarah stayed after school every day to help Emma with reading. Emma couldn't hold books easily, so Miss Sarah laminated all the pages and found special grips so Emma could turn them herself. My son has ADHD and every other teacher saw him as a problem. Miss Sarah saw him as energetic and creative. She completely changed how he thinks about school. Sarah advocated for my daughter when the district wanted to hold her back. She spent her own money on tutoring materials and worked with her every lunch break until she caught. I'd been married to someone who quietly changed children's lives every single day. And I'd thrown her away for someone who only cared about networking events and career advancement. But one comment led me to what I was looking for. Miss Sarah was the best teacher Emma ever had. Even after she moved away, she still sends Emma books and letters. Emma keeps them all in a special box. The comment was from 2 months ago. Recent enough that Sarah was still in contact with at least one of her former students. I messaged Emma's mother privately. Explained that I was Sarah's ex-boyfriend and wanted to send her a letter of apology. I know how manipulative that sounds now, but at the time I convinced my intentions were pure. Emma's mother Jennifer agreed to meet me for coffee. Sarah never talked about, Jennifer said bluntly. But Emma mentioned that Miss Sarah seemed sad sometimes during her last few months teaching. We figured it was stress from the job. I explained what had happened, how my betrayal had affected Sarah's ability to teach, how sorry I was that it had impacted her daughter's classroom experience. Jennifer's expression hardened as I talked. For the reason she left, she asked, or why Emma lost the only teacher who ever truly understood her needs. I nodded ashamed. Sarah changed Emma's entire trajectory, Jennifer continued. Emma was falling behind, getting frustrated starting to school. Sarah made learning feel possible again. Emma went from barely reading picture books to devouring chapter books because of Sarah's patience and creativity. Jennifer pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. A little girl in the same wheelchair from Sarah's classroom photo, but older now, beaming while holding a certificate. Emma won the district writing contest this year. She wants to be a teacher now just like Miss Sarah. Sarah still mentors her over video calls twice a month. The pride in Jennifer's voice made me sick with shame. Want to know what Sarah told Emma when she had to leave? She said sometimes adults make mistakes that the people they love, and the best thing Emma could do was learn to be kinder than the adults who disappointed her. Jennifer leaned across the table. Sarah was teaching my daughter grace and forgiveness while dealing with betrayal. She turned her own pain into lesson about choosing kindness even when others choose cruelty. That's when Jennifer told me what I'd been looking for. Sarah lives in Portland now. She's getting her PhD in special education. She wants to train teachers to work with kids like Emma. She's taking her heartbreak and turning it into something that will help thousands of children. Jennifer gave me Sarah's address. Not because she thought I deserved forgiveness, but because she believed Sarah was strong enough now to face whatever I needed to say. I drove to Portland the next day. Sarah lived in a small apartment near the university. I sat in my car for 3 hours, trying to work the courage to knock on her door. When she finally came outside to get her mail, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked peaceful. Older but not in a worn down way. She'd her hair short and was wearing glasses I'd never seen before. She moved with quiet confidence, like someone who'd learned to trust herself again. I got out of the car. Hello Sarah. She froze when she heard my voice, turned slowly, and I saw the exact moment she recognized me. What are you doing here? She asked quietly. I wanted to apologize, I said. I know that sounds inadequate, but I needed to know that I understand now what I owe. She looked at me for a long moment, and I realized I was waiting for some sign of the old Sarah, the one who used to soften when I was vulnerable, who always gave me the benefit of the doubt. That Sarah was gone. I'm not interested in apology, she said calmly. I've spent 2 years learning that I don't need closure from people who chose to me. I tried to explain how sorry I was, how wrong I'd been, how much I missed her. She held her hand to stop me. Do you know what I learned in therapy? She asked. I learned that didn't betray me because of who I was. Betrayed me because of who I are. Nothing I could have done differently would have changed choices. Her voice was steady, matter of fact, discussing our relationship like it was a case study. I spent months wondering if I held back, if I wasn't ambitious enough, if I should have been more like her. But the truth is, would have betrayed anyone who loved unconditionally once decided deserved better. She was right, and hearing her say it with such clarity felt like being dissected while conscious. I have a good now, she continued. I'm doing work that matters. I have friends who value loyalty. I'm dating someone who thinks my commitment to my students is admirable, not embarrassing. The word dating hit me like a physical. Of course she'd moved on. Of course she'd found someone better. I'm glad or happy, I managed to say I am. She said, but not because I forgot about what did. I'm happy because I learned the difference between someone who loves and someone who keeps around until they find an upgrade. She turned to go back inside, then paused. I hope find peace with choices, she said. But I also hope understand that some damage can't be undone with apologies. I hope learn to live with that. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like finality. I sat in my car crying for an hour before driving home. That was yesterday. Today I understand something I didn't before. I'd been looking for Sarah to forgive me, to tell me I wasn't as terrible as I felt, to somehow restore my image of as redeemable. But Sarah had already moved past me completely. She'd grieved, healed, and built anew where my betrayal was just a painful lesson that made her stronger. I was the only one still trapped by what I'd done. The woman I'd discarded had become a PhD student who mentors children while dating someone who appreciates her values. She turned her pain into purpose. Meanwhile I'm unemployed, alone, and writing confessions to strangers on the internet, because I have no one left in my who cares about my problems. I destroyed the best person I'll ever know because I thought I deserved better. I chose ambition over love, status over substance, potential over reality. Sarah was right. Some damage can't be undone. I traded a woman who saw the best in me for one who saw what I could do for her. I gave someone who loved my character for someone who loved my trajectory. Now I'm left with neither love nor success, wondering how different my would have been if I'd chosen gratitude over greed. Sarah doesn't need my apology because she never needed me to validate her worth. I was the one who needed her faith in me to feel valuable. Without her belief in my potential, I discovered I'm exactly as mediocre as everyone always said I was. I just never realized that she was the only reason I'd ever been worth believing in at all.